Hello, my name is Monica Brown, and I'd like to share a presentation on an internship that is available through the Crisis Clinic of Thurston and Mason County, which is in Olympia, Washington. Just for your information, one of the main ideas for the Crisis Clinic and the ability that people will have to get in touch with someone any time of day, any time of night, in the moment where they really need it is a quote I have from them is assistance rendered at the time of acute need will limit the duration and extent of emotional suffering and will minimize long-term disability. I have loved my internship with the Crisis Clinic of Thurston and Mason counties. If you are interested in having an internship with them, you'll need to go to the link in my presentation, which is thecrisisclinic.org/volunteer. And there you will fill out a digital form. It'll ask you a lot of questions about your thoughts and um, kind of what you're making sure that you don't have any specific biases against certain individuals. And if you are an open person, willing to help and care for anyone in the community, you'll be a good fit for the Crisis Clinic. You will fill out that information, and then after that, someone will contact you and explain the responsibilities. It will probably be Michael Dennis or Zachary Duncan. Zachary Duncan is the director who I worked with, but Michael Dennis has been hired on recently. He could possibly reach out to you. So, when you become a volunteer, before you're actually on call, you have extensive in-person or Zoom training meetings for those who can't meet in person. And it's hours and hours. I think it's like more than 100 hours of training. It's not difficult to do, but they want to make sure that you have the right skill set to be able to take calls from people that are in crisis. There are also online modules, including suicide awareness training, where you'll do a check-in and you know how to assess if someone is in danger and that you need to help them make a 911 call. Usually, well, always, we don't make outgoing calls at the Crisis Clinic, except in the case of an emergency, and we will help someone make a 911 call. But the idea is that if they can call the Crisis Clinic, they can call 911. So generally, we let people be agents unto themselves, just like we teach in the gospel. It's pretty awesome. You will shadow experienced volunteers for a time and listen to them taking calls. There's a phone and in the office at the actual Crisis Clinic, which is a private location that you will find out about when you are a volunteer, when you're accepted into the volunteer program. And you'll go there to that location, and then you'll actually listen in on calls that they take and see how they respond, how they interact, what they do. And that really adds to the your ability to then do it for yourself and help others. And then eventually you will take calls on your own. And I worked the overnight shift. So it started at midnight and would end at 7. Well, it would end at 8 a.m., but we always start 15 minutes early before our shift and end 15 minutes early to debrief with the previous volunteer, make sure they didn't have any difficult calls they need to talk about. And then the person coming after us will check with us to make sure we didn't have any difficult calls and just kind of check on each other and make sure we're okay after some of the calls that we might experience. Okay. Oh, and I did that 3 nights a week. The night shifts are very difficult to cover. So if you're willing to take an overnight shift, you will be in pretty much with the Crisis Clinic. Your responsibilities will be one, to create a confidential space to take calls. All calls are confidential. We keep everything confidential with callers. If they give you any private information, that's something you do not report when you're keeping track of your calls, and you do not relay to anyone. You need to have access to all the Crisis Clinic resources. They've done a really good job creating a list of resources that are available in our community. And then also you'll need to have a computer. Sometimes I have to Google something for someone, and then a way to track your calls and a way to log your hours. You need to own a personal cell phone. Because I did the overnight shift, I didn't want to be overnight at the Crisis Clinic by myself. I chose to use my phone to forward the calls to. So I would receive them. I was able to fall asleep and then wake up when there was a call and handle the call and then go back to sleep if I could. Sometimes it was a rough night. Sometimes it was super easy. Um, you actively listen to callers and reflect their thoughts and feelings. You validate the caller's plans and ideas. We don't suggest plans and ideas. We don't ask leading questions. We're really there to support the caller and their journey. You know how to access a caller's safety, a caller's safety and make appropriate recommendations. That's with the suicide awareness, making sure that someone isn't actively trying to commit suicide with you there, and that you are, you know, the danger for them, and you're able to figure that out through a protocol that they provide. You track your hours, your call descriptions, and fill out DCR forms, which is designated crisis responder forms. The crisis clinic has an alliance with another facility called Olympia Health and Recovery, and they do something amazing. They'll go in the middle of the night or any time of day with two law enforcement and a crisis responder, and they help people who don't need 911, they don't need the emergency room, and they don't need to go to jail, but they're having a lot of trouble, or family members that are having a lot of trouble. Maybe they don't have the ability to help themselves, and the crisis responder and the law enforcement have the ability to get them the help that they need, even against their will, which might be as simple as getting them some antibiotics, getting them to the hospital and getting some antibiotics if they don't have the mental capacity to know that they need that. It's really amazing. And they do not have a 24-hour line. So the crisis clinic is their 24-hour line. So calls are forwarded to us. We fill out the forms and log them, and then get a hold of the DCR in the middle of the night sometimes. We always create and maintain personal and crisis clinic boundaries, meaning I don't give out my personal information. I don't give out my name. I have a name. I have a pseudonym. My name is Grace, and I give that out to the crisis clinic. And you will do the same thing if you ever volunteer here, and it's amazing and you would love it. So volunteers are needed always. And when by becoming a volunteer, then that means other volunteers don't have to work as many shifts. Now that I'm actually going to stay on with the crisis clinic after this as a volunteer for one overnight shift. So 8 hours a week I'll do, just because I love it so much. It's amazing. And it kind of pairs with my profession. I've been a life coach since 2019. And so that really fits well with just having the additional skill set, and then having the skills that I have as a coach with crisis clinic callers is such a blessing, and it just is all amazing. Sorry, this is not okay. So making sure that for one, the crisis clinic can run, because it is 24 hours. So all day, every day, there's no breaks, and just making sure. And most people work a 4-hour shift. Overnight is the 8-hour shift. So just, and also the more volunteers that there are, the more the word is spread about the crisis clinic. It's such an amazing opportunity. And just sometimes we just need to get the word out that it's even a thing that people can have in their pocket to call if they're having a hard time. And it doesn't have to be a big crisis. It can be like you lost your dog, you're overwhelmed, or your spouse was yelling at you and you don't know how to handle it, or they have a teen line, which is wonderful. And then we have the DCR line I mentioned, and then we have the main line. So the Olympia Health and Recovery is the group that brings in revenue, because having a contract with them provides an opportunity for the crisis clinic to make money. Really, there's no way for it to make money except grants and then these kinds of contracts. So volunteering will help them be able to keep going. And then the last one is helping the DCR reach people instead of them going to jail or going to the emergency room and then just being released, like actually getting the help they need, whatever that is. There's lots of things that they might need. My personal growth I've experienced has been developing a deeper understanding of my local needs, knowing my community better. I've definitely improved reflective listening skills. I have increased empathy for everyone in every situation. I've connected with other social and health organizations I didn't know existed in my community. I definitely have more compassion for those around me. And I mentioned local resources, but just I have such a good respect for this agency. And just knowing what one person can do for another person is phenomenal. I remember one time I just helped a woman in her tent find her normal cell phone. She was calling on like a 911, like emergency phone, and 911 kept rerouting her to the crisis clinic. She wasn't actually having an emergency, but for her, it was an emergency. She couldn't find her phone and she couldn't contact the people that she loves. And I just stayed on the phone with her until she was and helped her kind of think of where she was before and where she could look. And we eventually found it. And it was just even that was just amazing. Just being there for someone in their need, in their place of need is a beautiful thing. Becoming trained as a crisis clinic volunteer and being there for individuals experiencing crisis in my community feels like a great way to support my learning and growth as a student in the marriage and family program. Marriage and families are made up of humans who need to feel heard, valuable, and receive support. I've been able to use the knowledge and skills I've gained through my education every time I volunteer. Absolutely coordinates with marriage and family studies program and degree. If you want to get a hold of the crisis clinic, I totally recommend it. I actually had this internship in my mind years ago, and I followed the prompting and filled out the volunteer form, but didn't hear from anybody for a while. And I was getting really nervous. So I finally called them. They have like a business line. I called and they just had to have a program ready to go, like a volunteer program. But luckily I was able to get it in time and I love it. I hope you guys take it, consider it. And this quote I want to end with is amazing. You guys probably heard of Viktor Frankl, one of the greatest psychiatrists of the 20th century, survived the death camps of Nazi Germany. His little book, Man's Search for Meaning, such a good book, by the way, is one of those life-changing books that everyone should read. Frankl once told the story of a woman who called him in the middle of the night to calmly inform him she was about to commit suicide. Frankl kept her on the phone and talked her through her depression, giving her reason after reason to carry on living. Finally, she promised she would not take her life, and she kept her word. When they later met, Frankl asked which reason had persuaded her to live. None of them, she told him. What then influenced her to go on living, he pressed. Her answer was simple. It was Frankl's willingness to listen to her in the middle of the night. A world in which there was someone ready to listen to another's pain seemed to her a world in which it was worthwhile to live. Often it's not the brilliant argument that makes a difference. Sometimes the small act of listening is the greatest gift we can give. And good luck with your internships. And this is a great one.